So you can't be the same as the sovereign if you're the Prince of Wales or the heir.
With the King reportedly ruling out any suggestion of a part-time role for the Duke of Sussex. Our Europe correspondent Ben Down.
This is not a request. It is an order. And that single sentence alone tells you everything about how brutally this story begins. Not a plea, not a negotiation, not even a warning, an order. Behind palace walls where silence usually softens reality, something snapped, and when it snapped, it echoed through Buckingham Palace like a gunshot. This wasn't just about money. This was about control, consequence, and finally slamming a door that had been left half open for far too long. When the joint statement landed, signed by King Charles III and Princess Anne, there was no warmth in it, no royal cushioning, no soft royal language. It read cold, sharp, surgical. The Crown was making something painfully clear: royal resources were never meant to become a private bank. And yet, that's exactly how the Sussex chapter had quietly operated for years. Issued publicly on April 12, 2025, but detonating privately on December 4, 2025, the order demanded $2 million be repaid by Prince Harry and Meghan Markle for misused royal funds. Not alleged, not under review, misused. Palace insiders say even veteran royal watchers were stunned. This wasn't symbolic discipline. This was financial enforcement, and it arrived after 5 years of lawsuits, televised victim narratives, and relentless pressure campaigns, all while the Sussexes quietly benefited from systems they publicly claimed to reject. The timing wasn't accidental. According to insiders, the order was finalized just as Harry continued resisting full financial separation while still pushing for restored privileges, including taxpayer-funded armed police protection. The Crown saw the contradiction clearly. You cannot attack the institution while demanding it protect you. And this time, the answer wasn't silence. The declaration was ruthless in its clarity. Every debt must be settled, every entitlement reviewed. No exceptions for former working royals who walked away from duty but refused to walk away from benefit. Princess Anne confirmed this privately at Clarence House on May 12, 2025, a date insiders say was chosen deliberately. A line had been crossed, and she intended to draw it in ink, not sentiment. Behind the scenes, a classified appendix leaked by a senior Treasury liaison exposed what the palace had been quietly tracking all along. 3 major zones of unauthorized spending. And at the center of it all, Frogmore Cottage and Nottingham Cottage, renovations originally approved in 2018 under the Sovereign Grant, meant to support full-time royal duties. But when the Sussexes stepped back in 2020, something didn't happen. They didn't return the keys, they didn't absorb depreciation, they didn't stop the costs. Even after a partial $2.4 million repayment in 2021, security and estate upkeep kept piling up. Another $1.6 million between January 2020 and October 2022 alone. Palace records confirm private security firms and estate staff continued servicing Sussex properties and traveled long after the couple declared independence. The message from the Crown was blunt, almost cruel in its simplicity: you are either in or you are out. There is no middle lane. That phrase appears repeatedly in internal memoranda from the Lord Chamberlain's office dated August 12, 2025. Investigators later discovered that during the drawn-out exit, amid the Oprah interview, lawsuits against British tabloids, and constant public rebuttals, several legal fees and media consultants were quietly routed through royal charitable infrastructure. Yes, even while publicly denouncing the monarchy, parts of the machine were still paying. That discovery changed everything. This wasn't just about Frogmore anymore, this was about integrity, and it triggered the first ever enforcement of Section 12 of the 2023 Royal Financial Accountability Charter, known internally as the Windsor Clause. Drafted by Princess Anne, ratified in March 2023, and passed unanimously after public backlash over unchecked royal spending, the clause gave the Crown the power to retroactively audit and reclaim funds misused by former or non-working royals. For centuries, we upheld duty and discretion, and said at the signing, this simply puts those expectations into law. No one expected it to be used this fast or this publicly. And then came the second blow. In the same communication, the royal household reaffirmed that Harry and Meghan have no entitlement to armed police protection in the UK. Fame doesn't qualify. Charity work doesn't qualify. Media presence doesn't qualify. Protection follows duty, not celebrity. This clarification landed days after Harry petitioned the Risk Management Board to reassess his security classification. But palace officials were clear. The removal of armed protection in 2020 wasn't punishment. It was policy. And it had already been upheld in court multiple times. Inside the family, reactions hardened. Prince William was reportedly briefed 48 hours before the statement dropped and backed it fully. In a palace aide memo dated March 12, 2025, he didn't mince words. Demanding armed protection while attacking the institution is coercion. Queen Camilla said nothing publicly, but was photographed smiling during a December 7th visit, a subtle but unmistakable signal of alignment. And King Charles, despite ongoing health concerns, was described as calm, focused, and resolute when signing the order beside his sister. Insiders say months of failed diplomatic outreach preceded this moment. Private conversations, back-channel attempts, silence, then finality. Harry and Meghan were given a deadline, midnight, December 31st, 2025. Respond or face consequences. Those consequences? Potential removal of titles, revocation of remaining patronages, erasure from ceremonial records, removal from the order of precedence, and total institutional shutdown. This wasn't a bluff. It was closure. And just as the pressure peaked in Britain, something else unfolded quietly across the globe. Something far more personal, far more uncomfortable. Meghan Markle stayed silent. No statement, no appearance, no response. But on December 6, 2025, a spokesperson for her estranged father confirmed something small and devastating. A handwritten letter had arrived at his hospital bedside in the Philippines, where he was recovering from leg amputation surgery. It was brief, carefully worded. No call, no video, no promise to visit. And the timing? 10 days after he entered intensive care, and just 1 day after Meghan's Netflix holiday special was re-released globally. That contrast would not go unnoticed. What happened next inside Clarence House was not emotional. It was not dramatic. It was colder than that. It was administrative, and that's what made it terrifying. On the evening of December 4th, 2025, just hours after the restitution order landed like a thunderclap, a closed-door meeting took place. No leaks. No press, no advisors outside the inner circle. Present were King Charles, Princess Anne, Prince William, and 3 senior courtiers who rarely appear in headlines but control the machinery of monarchy. Those who later heard fragments of the discussion describe one phrase dominating the room: no more ambiguity. For years, the Sussex saga had lived in gray zones, half in, half out, half forgiven, half tolerated. That night, Princess Anne reportedly cut through all of it. The gates must close and remain closed, not temporarily, not symbolically, permanently. Prince William, according to multiple insiders, did not argue. He didn't need to. The damage in his eyes was already irreversible. The Oprah interview, the Netflix series, the memoir, each one wasn't just criticism. They were breaches, personal, institutional, and generational. And this time, he wasn't speaking as a brother. He was speaking as the future. Behind palace walls, William has long been described as the most emotionally affected by the fallout. Furious is the word aides quietly use. Not explosive anger, something more controlled, more dangerous. A belief that trust, once shattered publicly, cannot be rebuilt privately. She's not a security threat, he reportedly said during an internal strategy session months earlier. She's a credibility threat. That sentence changed how the palace framed everything afterward. From that point on, every decision was made through one lens only: institutional survival, not family healing, not public sympathy. Survival. Princess Anne, the architect of the Windsor Clause, embodied that philosophy fully. Her leadership style has always been unsentimental, rule-bound, and brutally consistent. To her, monarchy isn't about affection, it's about continuity. And continuity cannot function if rules bend for the loudest complainer. Insiders say she personally reviewed the financial timeline that finally pushed enforcement forward. The unreturned Frogmore keys. Third-party staff accessing royal estates into 2022. Security costs routed through intermediaries. Legal and media consulting fees quietly filtered through charitable structures still linked to the Sussex name. It wasn't one mistake, it was a pattern. An internal memo from August 2023 had already warned of this exact moment. If restitution is not enforced within 2 fiscal years, the Crown's credibility will erode. Emotional diplomacy has failed. That memo sat ignored until it didn't. When the Windsor Clause was finally activated against Harry and Meghan, it wasn't revenge. It was precedent, and it sent shockwaves through the extended royal family. Suddenly, distance mattered, silence mattered, attendance mattered. At a December 9th baptism at St. James's Palace, senior royals stayed away. No Charles, no Camilla, no William, no Catherine. Only peripheral figures appeared, and insiders immediately read it as a signal. Anyone perceived as orbiting too closely to Sussex sympathies was being quietly iced out. The palace wasn't fracturing, it was consolidating. Even Prince Edward, long viewed as the family diplomat, aligned himself publicly with Anne and William. "You cannot teach duty while enabling defection," he reportedly told aides. The hypocrisy would be unforgivable. Meanwhile, public mood hardened even faster than palace resolve. Calls exploded across British media, showing overwhelming rejection of any return to taxpayer-funded protection for Harry. Not narrow margins, blowouts. Over 90% opposition. The sympathy that once followed Megxit had evaporated, replaced by something colder, accounting. People weren't asking how Harry felt anymore, they were asking who paid. The contrast was impossible to ignore. A couple living full-time in a multi-million-pound Montecito estate, surrounded by private security, demanding public funds from a country they left, while the UK struggled through economic pressure and service cuts. This isn't about safety, callers said again and again on radio shows. It's about entitlement. And while Harry pushed his latest risk management board reassessment, insiders were blunt about the odds. Even if risk levels were acknowledged, the palace had already clarified its position. Protection is governed by law, not bloodline. The crown would not intervene, and it certainly would not pay. That clarification alone shut down the fantasy of a quiet royal return through security loopholes. For Harry, the security fight had never been just about guards. It was about leverage, about access, about legitimacy. Without protection, he couldn't move freely in the UK, couldn't bring his family, couldn't appear uninvited, couldn't anchor charity work on British soil without exposure. And now, with 5.2 million hanging over him, he also lacked moral ground. Some insiders believe Harry genuinely thought regaining protection could reopen doors, partial engagement, global events, carefully controlled appearances. But palace sources were unmoved. Resignation is not reversible. That rule had been written in 2020 and rewritten in stone in 2025. While Harry fought institutions, Meghan disappeared. No interviews, no statements, just silence. And then came the letter to her father. To many observers, that moment crystallized everything. A handwritten note delivered days late, arriving only after headlines began questioning her absence. It wasn't cruel, but it wasn't warm either. It was controlled, branded restraint. Former royal press staff didn't mince words. You cannot preach family bonds on global platforms while refusing to show up when it matters most. That disconnect didn't just damage optics, it hardened perceptions inside the palace. Senior aides began drawing parallels between how Meghan handled her father and how she handled the monarchy. Minimal transparency, maximum message control, emotional distance wrapped in polished storytelling. That's the pattern, one palace source said quietly. We saw it early. And now, time is the enemy. Harry and Meghan have until midnight, December 31st, 2025. Settle, contest, or escalate. If they miss that deadline, January 1st triggers the next phase. Formal erasure. Titles revoked. Registries updated. Patronages terminated. Names removed from royal frameworks, not emotionally, but administratively. A palace source summarized it without drama. The sovereign household will proceed without pause. King Charles, aides say, was quiet after signing the order. Not angry, not regretful, just resolved. A father's heart aches, but a king's duty cannot. That line may never be spoken publicly, but it defines everything. This is no longer a family feud, it's an institutional closing. And whatever Harry and Meghan choose next will not just shape their future, it will lock in their legacy forever. In their legacy forever. In their legacy forever. In their legacy.